Hello and welcome from me, Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchison to this special Motor Trade Radio podcast interview. Many thanks for joining us for this special interview with Andy Barratt, a name familiar to many listeners as the former MD of Ford of Britain and now MD of Toyota and Lexus at Al-Futtaim in the United Arab Emirates. So welcome to the podcast, Andy, and great to have you on with us.
Thank you, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you just for a catch-up.
Yeah, no, welcome to the podcast, Andy. It's really great to be able to catch up with you again. We know from your social posts that you do still tune in from afar to keep tabs on what's going on in the UK, so we really do appreciate that. But we thought we'd start with a quick recap of your career to date. So you joined Ford of Britain as motorsport manager in 1996, becoming the launch manager for the Mark III Mondeo in 1999, and then the first generation Focus back in 2000. They were two pivotal cars which defined the brand in the 2000s and beyond. You then moved within Ford as regional sales director and Director of Customer Services, becoming UK Sales Director in 2011 and rising to the top job as Managing Director from 2015 to 2020. You were also Vice President of the SMMT between 2017 and 2020. Now, since November 2020, you've been the Managing Director of Toyota and Lexus at Al-Futtaim in the United Arab Emirates, the family-owned automotive, retail, real estate, finance and education group with over 10,000 employees in the Middle East. So hopefully that sort of set the scene with your CV, and I'm hoping I got it all right as well, Andy.
Yes, I mean, there's a few bits and bobs that have gone in between, but no, that's broadly it, Curtis. And, I mean, it's a varied, mainly OEM-based background, but always around the dealers. That front end, whether it was from even the early days of motorsport marketing where we were going out with dealers and road shows and generating traffic, through to the jobs that I loved the most in Ford, which were always the frontline sales jobs. Anything that involved the customer, retailing, driving traffic, getting that, and joining that kind of absolute buzz in the showroom was always close to my heart. So, landing the sales director job in Ford of Britain was always the dream job.
Yes.
More so than the MD, funny enough, because being that operational, chasing the number, trying to land a number every month is, when it goes right, it's fantastic. And
yes.
One of my bosses always said to me, it's the only job that will take you from the heights of elation to the depths of despair within 24 hours. He was so right.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's many people saying that at the minute after the last sort of 18 months we've had in the automotive sector, isn't it? So I mean, what a background there, Andy, and as I say, fantastic to have you on here. So, I mean, we've obviously used to seeing you in terms of that Ford of Britain and, very prolific within that social space and other things. And it may be worth just sort of starting, just giving us a bit of some background on the business that you now run, to give the listeners an idea of the sort of size and scope of the business. And also, what attracted you to go and take the job, apart from the 44 degrees weather that you're currently experiencing.
It's an interesting one. I mean, the Al-Futtaim business is vast in the UAE, and it's around a number of the African and Gulf region as well. But the piece that I run is Toyota and Lexus. So we are a distributor, not just a dealer group. So effectively, it's a quasi-OEM role. So, I do a lot of the things I used to do at Ford, but also run the dealer network, and they are the entire dealer network for the UAE. Just like Ford, Toyota are here the market leader with about a 35% share in total, so a little bit above Ford, but a commanding position. And in some sectors, the commercial vehicle business is up to 75% market share in certain sectors. So it's a very, very strong business built on that quality reputation of the Toyota product, the longevity. Al-Futtaim have been partners with Toyota for about 75 years. So it's a long, long-lasting distributor partnership. And, I'm privileged to get the opportunity to kind of put another run on the ladder for them with that relationship with Toyota. So the similarities are really close to the Ford piece for the OEM piece. And then it's like bolting on a big, very big dealer group on the front end, because I have total responsibility for the whole thing all the way through. So to me, I always wanted to get closer to that dealer part of the business. I think doing it in the UK would have been uncomfortable for some because of my background at Ford, and probably not really fair. And you're absolutely right. The allure of 44 degrees sounded appealing at the time, but when you're in it, it's anything but appealing. It's like walking into a hairdryer all the time. So to do it in a different culture and a different place, bring in the skill set that we have in the UK, that insight, all that experience from Ford, really stands you in very good stead. Full of, it's a multicultural business, and I think in the business that I run, which is about 1,000 employees, there's about 90 different nationalities in that 1,000 employees. So it's a very multicultural business, multicultural society, and it's just, it just opens your eyes to a bigger world, and it's hugely enjoyable with some amazing people.
And I'm presuming that kind of diversity of people, I'm presuming the backgrounds are just as diverse, if not more diverse, of experience.
Yes, it is. And what's really interesting is when you look around and you look at the skill sets and where they come, and the knowledge that I've brought, on my colleagues that have come from the UK have brought, you do see that the UK is a very advanced and sophisticated, clever automotive machine. We always believe it when we're in it, and we like to think that, we are at the cutting edge, but the UK truly is at the cutting edge of dealer professionalism, sophisticated marketing techniques, trade cycle management. Used cars, are a whole different world in the UK from anywhere that I've spoken to with, the multicultural base that we've got. So, while the industry can be very hard on itself sometimes, and, when you step outside and you look back in and you've got a reference point, you actually realize what an amazing group of people are in the UK industry and just how good they really are. And I think, that's a real big pat on the back for everyone in the UK sometimes, to just have that check and think, wow, we are good.
And Andy, I'm interested in what you were saying about the similarities and differences. So you describe the operation as a sort of quasi OEM with retailing. So you're distributing the cars within the UAE. What have you actually learned about being a retailer? And is there anything in your experience as a retailer that has maybe surprised you in relation to what you were doing previously?
I think that's a fantastic question. In terms of my initial observation, well, actually, if I look back already after 7.5 months, and I really appreciate, I don't think many OEMs and really understand what it's like to be a dealer, or even really truly understand the dealer business. As a time in Ford, as someone in sales, I'll be telling the dealers, do this, do this, do this. The reality is, I didn't really have that full understanding of what it really meant to be a dealer. The complexity, you can spend all your life just hiring people, because it's a much more transitionary business with people passing through, and getting the right caliber of people in dealers with the right skill set and the right desire to do things is a challenge sometimes. But the interdependencies, the complexities, it's such a fine line between getting it right and it all going out of shape, in terms of keeping the workshop right, keeping the sales right, keeping the used stock, and everything else, and keeping everyone safe and compliant, looking after customers in the right way, the way that they should. I've always believed that everyone should talk to customers. I did it in Ford. I was always prolific on LinkedIn, reaching out to anyone who had a problem with a Ford vehicle at any point in time, and kind of trying to lift their experience. Mm-hmm. And that was a really good lesson. But we should all realize that we're all retailers at the end of the day, and having that experience. So, I didn't really know what it was like to be a dealer. Actually, if I'd known then what I know now, I could have been much better at what I did in my current job. And also, I would have probably made the move much quicker, because it is so immensely enjoyable. When it goes right, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I would remember a very wise Ford dealer said to me, it's all about trust and understanding. He said, we don't trust you and you don't understand us. And he was being tongue-in-cheek. But actually, I know exactly what he meant. We have a brilliant relationship with Toyota. I mean, truly, they are a fabulous group of people to work with. But I understand exactly what that dealer meant. And if he listens, he'll know exactly who he is.
Okay, yes.
And by way of a follow-up, and it does follow on from what you just said there, well, what was it like for you personally stepping outside of that Ford universe for the first time in almost 25 years?
It was interesting, it was something that was always a personal ambition. I mean, cards on the table. I nearly did it a couple of years earlier with a different distributor, and we got to the offer stage, etc., and didn't pursue it any further. But I was so ready for it when I did it, in terms of I'd achieved everything I wanted to achieve at Ford. It was a natural break point in terms of my service. But the excitement of just getting that much closer to the customer and retail, but also doing it in a country that was completely alien, was a double challenge. But actually, someone said to me, again, another great quote, which was "Feel the fear and do it anyway," and I did. And I haven't looked back. And I very rarely get home in the evening and think, well, I didn't enjoy today.
Yeah.
So actually, professionally, it's been challenging but exciting. And, we've just gone through the launch of the all-new Land Cruiser, which is a unique product. The UAE is its biggest global market. This weekend, we went back to a British technique of a midnight drive away, but it was 50 vehicles. And these people were the first globally to drive away the vehicle. And you could imagine, you could see the energy, the buzz from the Al-Futtaim team, but also from the customers, and it was a momentous occasion for all of them, where actually, if I said to someone in the UK, well, we're going to do a midnight drive away, they say, well, so what? We've always done them, So actually bringing those techniques, okay, you can imagine in Dubai, it's a midnight drive away on different steroids with a lot more theatre, but actually, it's a great way of delighting the customers and bringing all that learning that I've learned from many wise dealers over many years is actually really good. And you end up upskilling the team here in the process. So it's good.
And yes, because you actually posted some footage of that on LinkedIn, and it looked absolutely incredible.
They'll do it right, won't they, I suspect?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the humidity was about 100%, so you didn't quite see that. But, they have fireworks, we had a closed road with 50 Land Cruisers in a double row, with all the covers coming off at the same time. It was of the grandeur of an OEM vehicle launch, but this was directly for the customers who then, at 1 minute past midnight, when the embargo lifted, could drive away. And Toyota, it went all the way to the top of the house in Toyota, and they've really appreciated everything we did. So it's great to do that upskilling, bring some excitement, and all those amazing lessons that we've all learned for many years in the UK. It just shows that actually they can be applied anywhere around the world with great impact. And I think that ability to have impact and make change and positive move forward is really motivational.
And on that point, and slightly digressing, but now you're not in the UK, do you think it was the right thing to do two plates? I mean, this is a question that was always raised at the time. I mean, I remember the days of those 1st of August, midnight, celebration, out for the evening, everybody there, collection, etc. And then it went to the two plates and it sort of slowed down, didn't it? I mean, do you think that harmed the sector, or do you think it didn't really do anything to it?
No, I think what it did, it leveled out a huge peak. And if you think about the UK car industry from a dealer point of view, if you're the bank manager looking in, you say, are you sure you want to be in this business? Because actually you don't really make money many months of the year. Yeah. You make it at the end of a quarter when your manufacturer bonus comes in, and you make it in March and September. And if you're lucky, you might make it on used cars in the January. But, if it had all been in August, that would have been a lot more cash flow drag and all the complexities that brings. The ideal, I mean, there are arguments that plate change drives the market on by another 5 or 10%. The reality is the ideal situation is to have a linear market which is steady every month with perfect cash flow, perfect flow of used cars that a dealer digests, preps, and has the steadiest business in the world, that is predictable. There's no peaks and troughs in staffing up, but the world isn't like that. So I think two plates from a dealer management point of view for creating more energy, more life in the market is good, but you don't have that customer pull that you always had on August 1st, which was amazing. I can remember as kids driving around, and if you saw a new registration on the day, that was a really big deal. And all that's kind of gone because with the current plate structure, they just get washed into the rest. So you've lost a little bit of that magic.
No, and I mean, you mentioned earlier about your social engagement when you were back in the UK for Ford, and I always remember the post that you put out when you pulled up at a petrol station in your Mustang when the new Mustang was launched, and you then went back with a model Mustang for the young boy, I believe, at the time, and just that. One, from your position within Ford of Britain at the time, but two, that experience that child has gone through at that time was amazing, isn't it? I mean, it is all about that engagement.
It is, and I think we all have the ability to make magic moments for customers, and that gesture cost nothing in the scheme of things, and it made a massive difference to a little boy who had some excitement and a different story to tell. Yeah. And if we can create positive stories for people through their interactions with their local car dealership, where they have a lasting relationship, and you create customers for life, but you create ambassadors for life. And I think that little bit of a care and attention that we can all afford, and if you're a dealer, sometimes ask your OEM partner for help if there's a customer in difficulty, I think isn't out of place to make sure that we create those magic moments every day. And, we talk in Al-Futtaim about brilliant basics and about just getting the basics right all the time, because if you get those right, the rest all kind of follow through. And I think you're right. Customer engagement is absolutely everything. And when I was at Ford, I actively used to search out unhappy customers, because if we could turn them around, it was just incredible. And I still get many customers a week still contact me saying, I know you're not at Ford, but can you point me in the right direction?
Can you send me a small Mustang toy?
Exactly. But the reality is, I was at Ford for a long while, and it remains in part of your DNA, and I'll always do my best to help them in the right direction of what they should do. So, I mean, I think it's a business that once it gets in our blood, it never gets out, and you always carry a loyalty to wherever you've been, because it adds to your experiences wherever you go.
So thinking about the here and now, and apologies for bringing it down a level, but you started over there in November 2020, and that was obviously mid COVID. Obviously through the
Yeah.
restriction lift period, but it was still mid the pandemic. What can you talk us through what the UAE experience was of lockdowns? How would they differ over there than what you probably experienced? Because you've seen it from two halves, haven't you? You saw what the UK did, and then obviously you over there and saw what happened over there.
Yes, I mean the proper lockdown was before I arrived, and and it was a true lockdown. You had to have a permit to go to the supermarket. So if you were out and you didn't have a permit, then there were ramifications of that. But as a country, they have great discipline in terms of this. So they've had a very progressive and active vaccination program. I'd had both my vaccinations by the end of March, and bearing in mind that I'm an expat here, they'd already done their own population, and they're probably the most vaccinated country in the world next to Israel, I think. So very active on vaccinations and really pushing people through. And your vaccination record goes on an app on your phone, and you just show that wherever you go, and that helps. But there's a very heavy testing regime. I think I probably had 50 COVID tests in the 7.5 months that I've been here. So if you're going anywhere, you have a COVID test. If you're going to a meeting with more than 15 people or so, you have a COVID test. So I've got a very extensive COVID test history, but it gives you all the reassurance. Anywhere in public, anywhere outside of your own home, a mask is mandatory. And if you don't have the mask, you're fined on the spot. And I think, these measures have helped really curb it down. I think the other thing is the weather, because it is warm, has helped. And because rain happens here artificially, they do something which is called cloud seeding. So they spray something in the atmosphere which forms the clouds and it rains. So they've deferred the cloud seeding to try and reduce the spread of COVID. So in terms of daily business, everyone goes around their business, they socially distance, and they wear a mask. But as a result of COVID, a lot of people left the country. A lot of the expats left. So the population is slightly smaller, but the market, and we always measure it back to 2019, because 2020 isn't representative anywhere in the world of what a car market should be. And the car market here is about 15% behind 2019. So you can see that there is some degree of suppression in demand. But in saying that, business confidence is coming back. Dubai has an expo in Q4, the World Expo, so that will drive more. Tourists are starting to come back, not from the UK because it's on the red list, but from elsewhere in the world, people are starting to come back because life is relatively normal here, apart from the masks. So, the measures have been very effective. And thankfully we haven't experienced any lockdowns, but people are very conscious about it. They do actively social distance. They do all wear a mask all the time. And people that you go in many places, particularly retail places, and if someone's vaccinated and they're working there, they're often wearing a badge saying, I'm vaccinated. So there's a badge of honor and a pride. So, last time I measured, which was a couple of weeks ago, the organisation that I've got, the Toyota Lexus piece, was 68% fully vaccinated, and that's probably 75 to 80% now. So, we're doing a good job at getting everyone vaccinated, which gives staff and customers that reassurance. So doing the right thing for the customers, but also our employees.
And talking about the business, what is your ambition for it, Andy? In terms of is dealer consolidation happening in the UAE, and are there chances to grow by acquisition? I'm sort of curious as to what the similarities and differences are between what your experience out there and back home in the UK, where obviously consolidation is progressing.
It's interesting because many organisations here are distributors rather than dealers. There are a few OEMs that have regional offices and dealer networks, but they're in the minority. So as a distributor, you're allowed to, really decide your own dealership footprint. So, there is no doubt that digitization is coming. It's coming everywhere. We have a very advanced kind of digital 6 steps to buy that is, reaping good rewards every month and is growing our business. But our aspiration is to make sure that we deliver a truly world-class automotive organization. The organization is bigger than Toyota and Lexus. It's got Honda, it's got Volvo, it's got Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram. It's got big trucks, it's got tractors in other parts of the world, lots of motorcycle brands, and lots of kind of aftermarket and conversion brands. So it's a very big conglomerate of automotive outside of all the other things that we do. But, the desire of the management team is to create a truly world-class organization that could compete on a world stage if it chose to. No, it's not going to do that. It's a regional group. But, to have that professionalism, to be there to adapt to any future change that may come from externals. We've had seismic shocks from credit crunch through to COVID just in the last few years. And, you want a strong organization that is resilient to further shocks. So our desire is to build that excellence. My one is to clearly be, Toyota's view is they want to be best in town. They've been told many times that, that they are the best OEM in the world, by many people around the world. But Akio Toyota says, I don't care about being best in the world. I want to be best in the town that I operate. So we're running our best in town program to be exactly that, the best at looking after customers. And, Toyota talk about the mass production of happiness, which is making as many customers happy as they can. And if we can deliver that, then we've done our job. And I think that's my focus, is improving the customer experience and truly being best in town for the business.
And in terms of the side of the business that you look after, how many sites are you actually operating at, and are they combined Toyota, Lexus?
Some are combined, some are separate. So if I treat them all separately, there's about 25 sites. If I treat them kind of joint, there's probably about 15.
Yeah.
15 physical sites. So it's a good geographic spread, but the UAE isn't the biggest piece of geography, so you can get around them all in 2 days if you really, really pushed yourself. But I haven't tried to attempt that yet, but I'm sure I will at some point.
You'll need a new Land Cruiser for that.
Yeah, I'm going to say the new Land Cruiser.
Exactly. Yeah, try and set a new record. Yeah.
And earlier on, you mentioned obviously about the UK, how established it was, and particularly in the used car market, in terms of that used vehicle park, etc. How important is used cars in the market you're now operating in the UAE and for Al-Futtaim?
It's super important going forward. I don't think any retailer in the whole region, not just the UAE, has been that sophisticated as used cars. Used cars seem to take on a life of their own because, it's quite a new car-orientated market in the Gulf. In the UAE, it's very new car-orientated, and those used cars seem to find their way across the water and into Africa quite often, where there's a huge demand for, good used cars. And a good used car going there may be up to, many years old. But, we're keen to develop a really good used car business. We have a used car kind of supermarket type operation that's been in operation for many years. And the Toyota business is growing. It hasn't been the focus of that much attention until now. And the Lexus used car business is more about supply. People tend to buy a Lexus and then hold on to it forever or pass it down through their family. So our Lexus used car business is the most beautiful boutique for used cars you've ever seen in your life. But it is an amazing operation with unbelievable customer satisfaction. So you have to adapt to the different market conditions, but it's definitely something we're super keen to continue to grow. So in the last couple of weeks, taking my Ford experience, the UK dealer experience, we actually opened the UAE's first used commercial vehicle operation. So it's not just Toyota, it's multi-franchise. So I couldn't resist a cheeky photo of a Ford Ranger. And it's in its first month, it's exceeded all its initial targets. And actually, and that's where that marketing, people are just naturally walking in saying, one, I didn't know this existed, but two, I'm really pleased because, I'm growing my business. I don't want a new one this time or whatever. And actually, it's the growth of commercial vehicles here is phenomenal because whatever you want, you can have it delivered to your home. It really is an internet-based economy. So, the use of vans and delivery vehicles is immense. So right time, right place, I think, with all that Ford experience.
It is interesting you say that because many years ago, I speak to people over in the UAE, and the used car market was always, you want a used car? I think there's some in the back here, where that was Mercedes or whatever franchise it was kind of the secondary in the backyard, come through the back here, through the curtains, and I think we've got some used cars out the back, if that's what you really want kind of thing. But it does sound like it's progressed significantly since then. So yeah, it's very interesting, and especially on the view of that commercial vehicle market as well. It's in terms of growth, that must be a significant opportunity of growth for you guys over there now.
Yeah, I hope so. We have a ready supply of used, but it was one of those glaring opportunities when you bring all that UK experience with you.
And thinking about the world of electrification, and they do like their supercars and big cars over in the UAE. How is and obviously being the especially one of an oil producing region, how is electrification progressing, and how quickly do you think it will progress going forward in the UAE?
I think it's a really interesting one. One, there are some electric brands here. Tesla have stores, and you see a few Teslas around. But when you talk to the OEMs, and I'm not talking about necessarily the ones that I look after, but others as well, there's a concern because they're not quite sure how well the battery will work in this kind of heat. What cooling and cost of cooling. As Toyota and Lexus, we are a huge supplier of hybrid. So we've delivered truly thousands of hybrids, and selling them as a sophisticated choice of clever energy utilization and premium drive has worked, and that's really kind of driven us on. But in addition, I run a fleet of about 60 hydrogen-powered Mirais, which we've had a couple of years, and we've run them in government fleets, etc., and we'll be continuing to run those. And Toyota's investment is very much into hydrogen as well. And their latest iteration wasn't a hydrogen fuel cell; it was actually a hydrogen-powered engine, which they raced in a 24-hour race. So they're developing a very strong zero-carbon strategy. We're supporting that zero-carbon strategy. So it is going to come, but there is no doubt that the government in the UAE want to pursue as much hydrogen as they do normal electrification, to the point where in the last couple of years we've actually built and operated our own hydrogen fuel station for the Mirais that we operate. So it's a crossroads, it's exciting, it can go either way, but I know, the OEMs I work with are very shrewd, they're very technically clever, and they're putting a lot of investment also into hydrogen. So it'll be interesting where it does land.
And Andy, turning to Ford, if I may, as mentioned at the beginning, you were the launch manager for the Mark III Mondeo, so that was the new shape, and you're also launch manager for the all-new Focus. What memories have you of bringing those cars to market, especially the Focus, because that was a brand new car. It was the Escort replacement. And what sort of buy-in did you have from the retail network?
I mean, I think any retail network loves new product because they know that there's a natural attractiveness and people will come in. Now, interestingly enough, the UK are not always the earliest adopters. You know, they tend to be a little bit more traditional sometimes, and you'll often get, no, I prefer the one that I've got, I prefer the old one, etc. So, you know, a radical car like Focus was always going to take time to settle down, and once it settled down, you know, it was a truly phenomenal success. Mondeo was equally interesting because I actually worked around the original launch in a different guise as well, and you know, Mondeo was such a leap forward. You know, that was the car that started, you know, with the late great Richard Parry Jones driving dynamics and really defining what customers should demand from a family vehicle. You know, it should be fun and engaging and safe and reassuring to drive.
Yeah.
And, you know, the man was a true genius. And with very clever Ford marketing, you know, those cars were phenomenal successes. And I think, you know, as a marketeer or a brand manager, working on really cool product that is in demand always makes the job a pleasure. But you can't be complacent. You've always got to be looking for the extra opportunity, or, you know, how can you sell more high series, or, you know, get more customers into the brand, or conquest more competitive owners, etc., and making sure the dealers are on message. And it's no different, funny enough, here. You know, you're going through the Land Cruiser launch, which actually is more popular here than any car I've ever seen. So, you know, we had our big launch on Saturday at midnight, you know, and I was like an expectant father pacing the floor for 10 transporters to arrive Friday night. And once they started to come along in the convoy, there were cars following it with people filming the transporters. That's how popular this car is here. You know, just a whole different level of enthusiasm. So, you know, building that magnitude of a launch, working on a cool new product, I think wherever you go in the world, it is a really amazing thing, whether you're actually OEM side, agency side, supplier side, or dealer side. You know, there's nothing quite like the car business, and there's nothing like a new car launch.
So bringing it back to the last 5 years, when you ran what is the biggest car company in the UK, looking back at that period of time, and throughout your career, there's probably many proud moments. But what would you say is the most proudest moment of your tenure of that 5 years with Ford in the Ford of Britain chair there in the UK?
I think there's lots of things that you can look back and think, yeah, we did a great job there or here. But truly, and it's the proudest moment of my whole career, was actually building the team that I eventually, you know, retired from. Well, that was the world's shortest retirement, but, you know, that I retired from because it was the most skilled, tight-knit, driven team of some very good leaders and some very good up-and-coming talent that really were world-class, in my opinion. And I think, you know, it takes a while to stitch a team like that together. It takes a while to embed the processes that they all work to and the drive for results. But truly, you know, wherever you work, it's all about the people. And they were a world-class organization, or they are a world-class organization, I should say. So without a doubt, the proudest moment, you know, was building that and helping that team develop.
Now, Andy, you mentioned something that quite interested me about the Lexus showroom experience being akin to a boutique. So I'm kind of curious, you know, would our listeners, especially those Toyota and Lexus dealers who are listening in, would they recognize your sites? And also, are OEM CIs less evident in the UAE?
Great question. I think if you look at Lexus, you know, they do have a global CI. So actually, when you look at a Lexus whether it's a boutique or a slightly bigger store, and we have one very big store, which is like a premium 5-star hotel in the service reception alone. You know, they are a premium standard, but they are around the world. So I think a Lexus dealer would recognize attributes of Lexus in any showroom wherever they go. But, you know, for me, coming from a volume manufacturer into what was a premium manufacturer at that point, because I started initially with Lexus before I took Toyota on, you know, it was all about the guest experience. And, you know, I was fascinated by the attention to detail and how I could improve that. And we're really lucky because the Intercontinental Hotel in parts of Dubai are part of Al-Futtaim. So I spent time with their management looking at what makes the difference between a standard experience and a truly premium one, and tried to apply that back from, you know, the aroma that you inject into the showroom, the flowers on front desk, or the way you are greeted, because every showroom has greeters in Lexus. So it was interesting, but I genuinely think that the Lexus standard is so high around the world that actually you get a similar experience. But CIs are different. When you're a distributor, you have a little bit more flexibility. But I think in our case, what it means is that we probably exceed them by some significant distance, because, you know, we've invested in truly world-class operations. Some of them are very large, some are not so large, but they're all of a truly, truly very high standard. And I think that ensures that we give customers a really good experience, but also makes it a great place for our employees to work, and that's super important.
And Andy, I do recall you being a stickler for that attention to detail, and I understand you have actually been out on some forecourts with a ball of string.
Yes, in fact, you know, it's interesting because, you know, I've given more people balls of string, and they've looked at me with a very vague look until I show them what to do with it. But, you know, and you know, and that was something that Sir Arnold Clark taught me. Yeah, so, you know, it's amazing all these things that you pick up along the way, but you carry forward in your career. And I think that's what's so wonderful about this industry, that there's no really super new ideas. They're just adaptations and applying them in different circumstances. So, you know, a good lesson for all.
And that's all about aligning the cars neatly on the forecourt, isn't it?
Yeah,
the amount of times that I've since heard that straight lines sell cars.
Yes.
But it's just that utter attention to detail.
Yes. Yeah.
All the time, you know, even when we were doing the midnight drive away, those cars in the road, because we closed the road, were perfectly lined up. And, you know, and it's just that constant attention to detail is what sets you apart from your competition all the time.
Not that I'm wishing this on your employees in any way, Andy, but I was brought up the same way, even to the point that I used to have site maps with, I would write on which car with registration number went in every single location, including the trade, including the sold, and awaiting delivery. Because I'd do the weight in delivery in terms of the last car would be the one that's going out last, so you're not getting a gap in the middle of a line and things like this. So yeah, I love all that. So fair. So I think it's the detail. It is that detail, and even to the point of making sure that when we were displaying the forecourt, it was about the colour mix as well next to each other. It wasn't just about lining it up, it was to make sure that the cars had the right colour mix across the front of the forecourt.
But I think that this is what sometimes is missing in the UK industry as well, is this, you know, I mentioned it earlier, brilliant basics, and it is brilliant basics. If you get the basics absolutely right all the time, then the rest just flows from it, because there's that pride and there's that energy that comes with it. And I think all those things, the amount of times you will talk to someone, and I did this in the UK so many times, oh yeah, we used to do that, but they could never remember why they didn't do it any longer. Yes. And I think, you know, this attention to detail is absolutely a thing. I mean, there are some dealer groups in the UK that are so utterly fantastic at detail. and it flows through everything they do. And I won't embarrass them by naming a few, but they are so exceptional. They're exemplary at it, and you see it in every single aspect of their business. And as a customer going in, you have such confidence as a result.
It becomes a culture, doesn't it? It becomes a culture within the business. That's the key with it. It's not about, it's not just the display of cars. It is, as you say, it's that discipline, that culture that gets ingrained within the business. The customer comes first. It's all about that first impression and experience, as you say, from the hotel chain that you're experiencing. So yeah, fantastic. So bringing you back to the here and now and thinking ahead, we're approaching we're at halfway point of 2021. What's next for you and the business in terms of priority? I mean, you've mentioned a few there in terms of the hydrogen, the used vehicle market, the commercial market. What is your priority now for the remainder of this year for the business?
I feel that we've got a very good sales operation. We're growing our used business. We've started the used CV business. The new, having the benefit of a new Land Cruiser is everything, because it is the benchmark car for the UAE. It's been here 75 years. So for me, I want to spend more time in after sales. And I think, I did an after sales role in Ford. I loved it. And you talk to salespeople and they kind of almost dismiss after sales. The complexity of after sales versus sales is mind-blowing, and I keep reminding people that. But I also like to remind people that actually, when you look at margin to margin, the best margin in any business is always in after sales. If you can sell every hour that's available, there is more margin available there than any other aspect of the business. So I want to work on our guest experience, our efficiencies, and just getting more throughput in our after sales operations. They're not slouches by any means, but if we can turbocharge them, then we can take another leap forward. So, exciting times ahead.
Well, look, many thanks for joining us today, Andy. We both really appreciate the time you've spent with us, and we wish you and the team all the best and look forward to seeing your regular updates on LinkedIn. Do keep those coming. And also do come back later in the year to give us an update on how you're getting on.
That'd be fantastic, and thank you for having me.
You are welcome anytime, Andy. I mean, it's been far too long to get you on in the first place, but it seemed absolutely timely to get you on now. And don't be a stranger. If there's something you want to come on and you want to talk about, then feel free to reach out to us, and the door's open for you, Andy, anytime.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Andy. That's all for now. You've been listening to this special Motor Trade Radio podcast interview. Many thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. We'll be back with the industry headlines on Saturday. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.